Joining us now, Corey Lewandowski. Corey Lewandowski, the campaign manager 2015-16 for President Trump, seriously considering a run for Senate in New Hampshire. Last time he was with us gave October as a potential time frame to make a decision. Lots to talk about. He's joining us now. Hey, Corey, great to have you, man.
Good morning. It's great to be back with you. Thank you.
Okay, Corey, let's go over some of these issues. Last time we were on, you were looking at October as a potential time frame for making a decision on your candidacy, and you said a lot would depend on how much money was raised by a couple of the candidates that were in there now. You laid down the benchmark of $2 million. Neither of these candidates are going to raise that. Is the end of October, November still your time frame in making a decision on running for U.S. Senate, New Hampshire, Corey?
I think it is, John, and I think what we have to understand is that if you're going to go and defeat an entrenched incumbent like Jeanne Shaheen in my home state of New Hampshire, you have to have a couple things. One, I believe you need the support of the president and the administration and run as a candidate who will support this president's agenda. And number two, you need the financial resources to compete against a woman who has gotten very rich while in office, but has the ability to raise tens of millions of dollars, because right now, I don't think the Democrats believe that Jeanne Shaheen is a vulnerable individual unless I get in this race. And so we need to make sure that the candidate who's the Republican nominee has the financial resources to remind the people of New Hampshire that Jeanne Shaheen voted against Neil Gorsuch, she voted against Justice Kavanaugh, and she voted to continue to fund sanctuary cities for illegal immigration.
Well, Corey, without you in the race, the Democrats in New England are now putting their money into Maine trying to topple Susan Collins. So without you in the race right now, you're exactly right. They've basically given it to Jeanne Shaheen, saying that's going to be an easy win, and they're putting their resources in your northern neighbor. So let me tell you the consequences of you getting in politically, and this is the business I'm in. Not only do you become a viable candidate in New Hampshire, I think if you get in, you're going to be the nominee, and you're going to win, and you're going to beat Jeanne Shaheen. They have to pour millions and millions of dollars in here, which means they can't pour millions and millions of dollars into Maine or somewhere else, Colorado with Hickenlooper. I mean, there's only so much money to go around. There's only so many resources. So you tie them up and you beat them, and I think that's would be an asset to Susan Collins. So there's a lot of ramifications here.
Well, there's no question about it. And you look at some of the Republicans who we've already recruited to run for the U.S. Senate. I think of John James in Michigan, a very high-profile race. John ran 2 years ago, lost that seat. Is going to run for the seat against a much lesser-known candidate, incumbent U.S. Senator. But there are only a few places where the Republicans can be on offense, and I think New Hampshire is one of them. I think Michigan is one of them, if I get in the race in New Hampshire. And so the Democrats need to make sure that they're held accountable for the far left-wing policies that they are espousing. Don't forget, Jeanne Shaheen nor any of the Democrats in the U.S. Senate have pushed back on this notion that the world is going to end in 12 years, that the biggest threat to our society is climate change. They have not answered for the Rashid Tlaibs of the world, the anti-Jewish sentiment that they continue to espouse. These people are voting in lockstep with Nancy Pelosi, with Chuck Schumer, and with the AOC plus 3 crowd. And I don't believe either in New Hampshire, where I live, or in Michigan, where John James is running, that is what the people of those states want.
Corey, let's get to the press conference. Let's just start there. Monday, I was kind of shocked by it, I have to be honest. Representative Tlaib and Representative Omar Elan doing a press conference chastising, I guess, all U.S. policy for giving billions of dollars in aid, which we've done to Israel for many, many years, and saying that the aid should be contingent upon Palestine getting their own state. And right now, Jared Kushner, who's been negotiating a peace process, he is now proposing a two-state solution in Palestine. I, for the life of me, have never seen congressmen get up that make anti-Semite comments, anti-Israel comments, and then basically call for cutting U.S. aid to Israel and leveraging it as contingent upon a two-state solving the problem for Palestine. How do you stand on that?
Well, it's very, very simple, John. Israel is our greatest ally in the region. Benjamin Netanyahu and President Donald Trump work hand and glove so that they know that if we need help in the Middle East or they need help, we will be there by each other's side as countries to make sure that we are fighting for the freedoms that our people so desperately need. And so, Rashid Tlaib wants to politicize this whole issue. And when you see far left-wing activists like Bill Maher calling out these members of Congress for the way that they are treating Israel, it should really be a wake-up call for Nancy Pelosi that this is where her Democratic Party is. And predominantly, American Jewish voters vote Democrat. But I have to think that this rhetoric coming from these two members of Congress is going to change their minds and say, if we care anything about Israel, where our fathers or grandfathers or they came from, they'll be voting
right.
Republican for a change. And I'm not here to tell you that Donald Trump is going to get 100% of the Jewish vote, but I don't believe that any president in modern history has done more for the nation of Israel than Donald Trump has, whether it's recognizing Jerusalem as the actual capital, if it's the recognition of the Golan Heights. They named a town in there in Israel on behalf of Donald Trump because Netanyahu said it. He has been the best friend to Israel of any president he's ever worked with, and the exact opposite of that is true with these members of Congress who chastise Jewish people and think that the whole issue should be contingent on Palestine, who we all know has not been very forthcoming in trying to come up with a solution.
Well, they will not even sit down and negotiate with Greenblatt, Jared Kushner, or the U.S. Trump administration contingent. They will not. And I even interviewed the foreign minister, I believe it was, of Palestine, the chief spokesperson and foreign minister. And basically they said they're not even going to come to the table and have a conversation with administration in their effort to get peace. So, I mean, look, if you can't talk, you can't get anything done. I want to get to the president's jawboning Jerome Powell. He would like to see another rate cut for the Fed to keep the economy soaring along, saying that we're not competitive now with Asia. We're not competitive with EU either because their rates are lower. The president looking for another rate cut in September, the next quarter. The Democrats criticizing the president for putting undue pressure on Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman, but this is typical jawboning. Barack Obama did the exact same thing with Janet Yellen when she was there. Are you in favor of the Feds in September doing another rate cut? Corey, if you were senator, would you be in favor of that?
Look, I think the short answer is I would be. And the reason I would be is we have now recovered from the atrocious Barack Obama policies. We have more people working today. But it's not just about our people in our country who are working. We need to compete in the global marketplace. And not having a level playing field, we have seen, has hurt the United States for 30 years. So if we want to remain competitive in the global marketplace, we have to have a monetary policy which is giving us, if not an advantage, at least a level playing field. And by cutting the rates, it gives us, once again, an opportunity to be competitive. Look, we have more workers working today than ever. But we can't just rely on that. We have to make sure that we are competing in the global marketplace because we've seen what China has done with their currency. We know that other countries have a much lower interest rate. And if we're going to compete in that environment, we need to be able to compete with the interest rates as well.
Okay, let's get to the president's new executive order laying out his own solution to the Flores agreement yesterday, saying that they were going to do away with the 20-day rule that says if you come to the United States either as an unaccompanied minor or accompanied minor with an adult, you can only hold them for 20 days. Well, the average time to adjudicate an asylum claim is 50 days. And, of course, as you know, Corey, 90% of the asylum claims, United States judges have ruled as being bogus and not worthy. So only 10% on average are worthy. So basically, we have a catch and release program. So now what the president has said is, okay, starting immediately, we're going to get rid of the 20-day rule. We're going to keep the families together, so no separation. They're going to have facilities that are clean, well-maintained, recreation, can go outside, gaming, have fun, take care of everybody, feed them, clothe them. But we're going to wait until they can get in front of a judge in the United States, whether that be 25 days or 50 days. And then obviously, if a judge says asylum, good to go, they have a process in the United States where they can stay. But if they're said your claim is not worthy, it's bogus, you have to go back. But they're not separating families and they're keeping everybody safe. What is the problem with that? Is that not a sensible plan? And as a prospective senator, how do you stand on that?
John, it's very simple, right? Nobody wants to see illegal immigration continue. And nobody wants to see when these families come across the border, they're separated. But what we have known and what we have seen is that children and young adults are often used as pawns in this terrible game where they're not related to other individuals. They say that they are. But what the president has said was, we're going to take action. The most important thing that we can do is we can close our border so that we know exactly who's coming into the country and for what purpose they're coming. Once we've done that, all of the rest of this is a fix. Now, the president has always said that this decision was a temporary decision, and I agree that we have to have a better solution of keeping families together if they are apprehended at the border for coming here illegally. I agree with that. I still think we have the fundamental problem that we have a porous southern border that's allowing individuals and families to take this terrible journey with much danger to them to come to this country and then cross the border illegally and claim asylum. This is not how the system is supposed to work. So I'm in favor of keeping families together, but I am much more in favor of preventing illegal immigration from continuing to occur into our country.
Corey, if you were to become senator from New Hampshire, we have an E-Verify law in the country, which simply is not being seriously enforced by anybody. Do you think E-Verify is the right way to go? And if companies violate that, would you be in favor of legislating stricter consequences for noncompliance?
Well, the answer is E-Verify is one solution, and it's an important solution. And what we see is that companies who are following the rules as it relates to E-Verify have the opportunity to bring people in on a temporary basis to do some temporary work that they can't find Americans to do. This is predominantly used, in some manufacturing or seasonal work environments, particularly the farming area. But we have to have E-Verify. And look, I think we also, John, need to penalize those employers who are not using the system, who are using cheap labor, who aren't doing the proper paperwork. Look, we've now seen it on multiple occasions, and what that is really doing is it is taking jobs away from Americans who have the right and opportunity to go and take these jobs. But when these companies bring in individuals and don't use the E-Verify system, they're skirting the law. I want to see larger penalties for these companies, and I want to see those CEOs held accountable for taking jobs away from American citizens.
Right. This is, I think, one of the most frustrating things. We talk about the unholy alliance. This is one of the areas where Republicans are just looking the other way because many of these companies that are violating this are also their donors in the swamp. Corey, one of the issues I know that
exactly right, John. You're exactly right. The swamp is riddled with special interests who don't want the U.S. government to go after these business owners who aren't following the rules. I think it's unacceptable. And, John, I have to say one thing. I'm going to have to do today? I'm going to have to peel the bumper sticker of Inslee Swalwell, President, Vice President, off of my car because the breaking news last night, I know it's shocking to your listeners, Jay Inslee has dropped out of the race for president.
I know. That was that is a bumper sticker of all time, right? We also got Hickenloopers gotten out now, so all the 1% are starting to drop like flies. Let's get to the president's trade policy on China. Look, there's been no inflation right now, but the president said something yesterday that was interesting. He said, "I could make a deal with China tomorrow, and everybody would be happy, and maybe that would solve some of the issues on Wall Street with stocks going up and down." But he says, "I'm not going to make a bad deal because it's not in the best interest of the American people and the country. We've been ripped off for 50 years by them." If you were in the U.S. Senate today, would you be in favor of the president continuing to stand strong with these China tariffs in order to bring our supply chains back to the U.S.?
John, if I'm in the United States Senate, I'm encouraging the president to take the long view of what China has done to our economy, and it's time that we fight back, because we're going to look back on this administration in 20 or 30 years, and we're going to say, thank you, Mr. President, for standing up for American workers, because for too long, John, you know this, China has stolen our jobs, they've stolen our intellectual property, they have ripped our country off, they've subsidized their own companies at the detriment of companies trying to compete in the U.S. We've seen it with steel. We've seen it with so many different things, aluminum, washing machines, you name it. China has been ripping us off every day, and the American consumer has not fully understood the impact of their intellectual property theft, their subsidizing of their companies. And so what I say to the president is, sir, look, I understand people on Wall Street are skittish. I don't care about Wall Street. I care about the people who work on Main Street. I care about the mom and dads who get up every day and have to go to work, and they look at their 401k plan and at the end of the month and they say, you know where this was 3 years ago? At a fraction of where it is today because of Donald Trump, because of $9.2 trillion in value he's created in the stock market. And what you have to remember when you go to the ballot box in November of 2020, what you have to remember is you ask yourself the same question, am I better off today than I was 4 years ago? And for those day traders and those Wall Street fat cats who make their living on the day-to-day of what's going on, hey, I don't care about them. And I know it sounds terrible, John, but it's the truth. I care about the people who are better off today than they were 3 years ago when Donald Trump was elected, and they'll be better off a year from now because of what Donald Trump is doing to stand up for American jobs. Because you give us a level playing field, John, against China or any other country in the world, we are the greatest, hardest working people the world has ever known, and we will compete. But you can't compete against people who play unfair. And that's what this president is doing, is leveling the playing field.
We're with Corey Lewandowski. We've only got a couple more minutes. On the campaign trail, when you were the campaign manager, the president was an advocate of getting out of foreign entanglements and these perpetuous wars. He called for a look at withdrawing from Afghanistan. Right now, the Trump administration negotiating with the Taliban through the state of Qatar in Doha with their emir to put a plan together to get the majority of the 13,000 troops we have out of Afghanistan, because that's being met with huge resistance by the warmongers and the neocons there that we deal with in the swamp every day. If you're a U.S. Senator, what is your position on Afghanistan?
It's very simple, John. You bring our men and women in uniform home unless there is a immediate strategic threat or rationale for keeping them there. And I think we need to keep some troops in Afghanistan, but we've been there for over 6,000 days. To put that in perspective, this war's gone on so long that people who are now serving in Afghanistan weren't even born when this started. This has been a colossal failure. Afghanistan has been a country that has had infighting going on for literally 2,000 years. And if you're telling me that from a strategic military position, we need to keep a large troop presence in Afghanistan, I want to see the data on it. Because I do think there has to be some limited amount of resources there, whether that's special forces, whether it's QRFs, quick reactionary forces. But the truth is, we don't need, in my opinion, John, a large, massive U.S. troop buildup of our American troops in Afghanistan. I agree with the president. It's time to bring these men and women home because we have to understand what the mission was. And I believe this president knows that keeping those troops there is not furthering our mission. We need some show of force there, but I don't think we need at the current levels that we have.
Last question, Corey, and I just have to ask you this, if you don't mind. In 2015, you named me, John Fredericks, as co-chairman of the Trump campaign in Virginia. I really appreciated that. It was one of the most fun and exciting things I've ever had to do. I'm vying for state chairman again for Virginia. I just want to know publicly if you think I did a good job since you did that, and if I have your unequivocal backing for state chairman of Virginia for the Trump campaign in 2020.
Well, John, as you know, I only made a couple good decisions, and bringing you on board as the state chairman of Virginia was one of them, because you saw something early on with Donald Trump that I don't think any other radio show host in the country saw. And so I saw that, you saw that, and I'll tell you this. Yeah, I think it would be a great decision for the campaign to bring you back on as a leader in Virginia. You're already a leader, a leadership role, a chairman role, working with the team who you already know to make sure that we're turning out the Trump voters in Virginia in 2020. I endorse you wholeheartedly, John.
Okay, Corey Lewandowski, thank you for that. We're really looking forward to your decision on running for U.S. Senate in New Hampshire. I'm telling you, if you get in, you're going to win. You're going to get elected to the U.S. Senate. Trump is going to win New Hampshire. I think your candidacy puts Trump as the favorite in New Hampshire because of the attention the state is going to get. And I think the president will do several rallies there, and I think he carries New Hampshire. And Corey Lewandowski, I think if you run, you're going to be the next U.S. Senator from New Hampshire.
Well, thank you, John. I agree with you again. Boy, you're really smart. I think if I run, I'm the next U.S. Senator from New Hampshire, and I promise you and your listeners I'll be thinking about this decision over the next 4 or 5 weeks, and you'll hear it from me. I promise you first.
All right. Corey Lewandowski promises he'll announce his candidacy when he decides to do that on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Thank you, Corey, for being with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.